One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. Robert Lineberg has been the athletic director at Radford since 2007 and is our guest today on One Question. And Robert, you have a really interesting path to becoming an athletic director, and that's certainly a topic we cover quite a bit in this series. So you were a longtime men's basketball assistant coach, SMU. You spent a number of years at SMU. You spent some years at UNC Greensboro back when UNCG was in the Big South. But I'm curious of your perspective of being an athletic director and what your time on the bench as a men's basketball assistant provided you in the context of how to run an effective athletic department. What did you learn in that process?
I think it kind of goes all the way back to being a kid. My father was a long-time and very successful high school football coach and athletic director. I think he's still currently the second winningest high school football coach in the history of the state of Virginia, but also an athletic director and had a very effective and successful athletic department. And so hanging around that all my life gave me a little bit of, actually a lot of perspective into all the things that athletic directors do. It may not have been at certainly at Division I level, but at a level where he worked extremely hard to put all the teams in a position to succeed, and kind of a tireless work ethic in that respect. But I was fortunate when I was at Virginia Tech as I guess you can call it a graduate assistant, administrative assistant type position with Bill Foster. Dave Brain was our athletic director at the time. And Dave had been a college football coach. He'd been at VMI and the University of Virginia. He played at North Carolina, a very great player at North Carolina. But Dave kind of, even from that point in time, started to kind of become a mentor of mine, and we stayed in contact over the years. He ended up leaving Virginia Tech to spend, 10 or 12 years at Georgia Tech. And so he's been very he would come back to be really influential in my life later. But I went on to work for Bill Foster and then go down to UNC Greensboro with Mike DeMent and off to SMU. I was the interim head coach for a period of time there. And at that time, Jim Copeland was our athletic director, who had been the AD at Virginia, and just a wonderful, wonderful gentleman who has since passed away. And Jim's got so many people that work for him that are out there in college athletics doing great things, like Kim Record at UNC Greensboro, John Montgomery, who's the associate AD at North Carolina. Just so many people, John Jackson at Duke, all came out of Jim's shop. Sean Hilburn at Stony Brook, at Jim's shop at SMU. So, kind of, even as a coach, I'd kind of watched the whole athletic administrative thing and liked it and was out of coaching and in commercial real estate in Dallas when the job at Radford in my hometown came open. And it's, interestingly enough, Dave Brain ended up running the search, and I was kind of an out-of-the-box candidate and came up and interviewed for it, and I think obviously interviewed fairly well and was offered the job. And 9 years later, it'll be 9 years on November 1, I'm still here. So kind of a circuitous route back to my hometown, but it's been a great process. I've been very, very fortunate. But I go back to Dave Brain being such an influential part of my life. Every 2 weeks or so, I have coffee with Dave, and we sit down and talk about issues that I may have in my department or other departments out there, or what's kind of the landscape of college athletics. And for any young administrator or coach, I can't overemphasize the value of a mentor or mentors, multiple mentors that can really help you along the way, because it does make a big difference.
What have you found over the years to be an effective way for aspiring administrators to connect with a mentor, not force it, gain value out of both sides of the relationship? Look, everybody in our business is really busy, so there's got to be a two-way street. What are some tips you would give to those who are listening on how to create that type of dynamic for a mentor or a mentee?
Well, I mean, I think it's basic relationship building. I don't think you can force things. And like you mentioned, I mean, being respectful of people's time is really important. But what I've found is that most of us in this position really do want to help, and we want to see younger folks in our industry step up and get themselves in position to be successful and run athletic departments the right way. And that's what I've learned from Dave Brain and even Jim Copeland. Even though I wasn't directly an administrator with Jim, I learned that common sense approach to leadership and and everything you do is very critical to the overall success and the impact you make on your student athletes and your coaches. So I think it's just carving out some time to make some calls, and if you happen to be in an area where your teams are playing, and there's an AD or an associate AD you could have an opportunity to meet with, I think those are great ways to do it.
If a young administrator out there thinks, what can I offer in a relationship with a senior associate AD or an AD who I may want to learn from, I may want to observe how they do business, and I may want them to be my mentor. What are some ways that they can kind of think about a better context of that relationship in terms of, again, being respectful of time, but also providing value in the relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interviewing young sports information folks today. You always learn something. I think in almost every situation, if you're listening, you're learning, and it's always great for me. I always want to know how people are doing things in different departments, and to me, there's always tremendous value in just being able to hear, what are you doing with social media, or what are you doing with your scholarship budget, or what are you doing with your annual fund? All those things. I think it's a two-way street that you just learn from each other. So I don't turn down many opportunities to meet with folks unless I absolutely, just hammered with a busy schedule.
Let's talk some hoops. So one topic in the Big South and really nationally that's been really hot lately is our transfer situation in basketball. And the Big South even went to the extent of proposing that roster makeups here lately, and again, just a proposal, roster makeups would consist of only so many transfer student athletes, which we'll see how that plays out. But where do you fall on how we should be handling transfer student athletes, either of the traditional variety or of the fifth-year variety?
I just think the current rules pertaining to transfers are not going to hold up. I think as we look at the landscape and coaches are able to escape contracts and things of that nature without penalty, and you have a student athlete who's not an employee, that they can't to go and play right away if they want to, in their mind, better their position. So I think that what the Big South is proposing is a way of saying, well, let's not restrict a student athlete that wants to transfer, but let's put some teeth into who's accepting these transfers, particularly at a level like ours where there is a perception that bigger schools are coming in and literally recruiting student athletes off of our rosters. I don't think anybody ever had an intention for that to happen, but as this whole rash of transfer type things have come up and hundreds and hundreds of kids are transferring, it's become very common that people are really, I think, evaluating young players off of other colleges and actively recruiting them, maybe not directly, but indirectly through AAU coaches or affiliates of the family. So I think it's a real problem. I think it's a problem, particularly when eligibility and retention are judged in things like an APR. Now, I really feel bad for Nick McDevitt at UNC Asheville, who's done just a fantastic job, and to lose two young men like he did. I think they were both probably good enough students that he's not going to get dinged with any points with his APR. But if they weren't, and he gets hit with that, how is that Nick's fault? So I think that we've got to really reevaluate the APR structure, and then again, I think what the Big South is doing with some punitive approaches to folks that are taking a lot of transfers could potentially work for us. But it's a tough subject all the way around, and I don't think there are any easy answers.
Yeah, the word poaching is probably too strong, but I'm probably
I don't think all administrators really understand, because the ones who haven't coached, how aggressive recruiting is in college basketball and college football. I mean, it's one of the most intense. I mean, we're coming up on November 14th or whenever the signing date is, and my heart goes out to those coaches this time of the year, because they have worked so daggone hard to get these kids signed, and then you get them here, and then unfortunately they may get recruited right off your team. But I also have, a part of me also has a soft spot for the student athlete too. That if a kid, is at UNC Asheville and maybe he thinks he can play at a higher level at Notre Dame or Arizona, or wherever it might be, how should we stop that from happening if that's what the kid wants to do? So I think it's a delicate subject. It really is.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.